Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man? They say murder three. Strange things that happen here. No stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.
Welcome to Strange Things, broadcasting from the Arkanasa Radio Studios in Laredo, Texas. And welcome to the show. I'm your host, Chris James. Tonight, we're going to be talking about giant bat creatures that have been seen in various locations. Before I get going, it's time for a rant once more. I watch a lot of shows on paranormal activity. You just ask my wife. I watch the channel, the Travel Channel, all the time now since just about everything paranormal and hardly anything to do with travel, unless you consider the fact that the paranormal researchers are doing a bit of traveling. You don't see shows about visit wonderful Hawaii for vacation. Instead, it's let's go to Easter Island and look for ghosts. Josh Gates now has a spin-off called Expedition X. It's kind of a Mueller and Scully mix, only the guy is the total skeptic and the woman is the smart one. Why? Why do the folks making TV shows insist on putting skeptics in on every show? The UFO hunters. There was Bill Burns and Pat Erskine looking for flying saucers, and they had to drag Kevin Cook around with them. No matter what evidence was found, Cook would try to explain it away. Then there was Finding Bigfoot. Bobo, Cliff Barrickman, Matt Moneymaker had to drag Renee Holland around through the woods. Had Bigfoot popped out from behind a tree and planted a kiss on Renee, she would have tried to come up with an explanation that didn't involve Bigfoot. If you go to any Bigfoot conferences, people talk about Bobo and Cliff, and sometimes they'll even talk about Matt. Nobody has anything good to say about Renee. Well, I already know that she was told what to say and when. Hollywood insists on scripting their unscripted shows. The folks that are going to watch any kind of a paranormal show are already pretty much convinced the UFOs or creatures or ghosts are real. The skeptics are going to watch something else. You don't find skeptics flocking to conferences to poo-poo the speakers. They'd wind up being thrown out the door. Yet, every TV show out there has to include the skeptic to keep it balanced, as they say. Any TV show will always have to include some dim bulb that doesn't believe anything the show is about. Why? This does nothing to enhance the show. Leave the skeptic at home. All they do is annoy people that are watching the show. When I first started this podcast, I had a guy offer to come on the show with me to offer the other side of anything I was talking about. I thanked him and said it wasn't that kind of show. I give you the paranormal stories as I find them. If you don't believe me, that's fine by me. If you really believe Lee Harvey Oswald shot Kennedy, well, that's okay. The nasty, noisy, negative naysayers add nothing to the show, so how about just getting on with the paranormal stuff? Too bad Hollywood never listens to anyone. I like Josh Gates. I've watched every show he's been in since Destination Truth aired back in June 6th, 2007. When Josh went looking for the iguanodon. Josh and his team searched Papua New Guinea coast for a mermaid that they called the Ree, and then they went hunting for this creature called the iguanodon near a village in Tanganavudu. I liked how the entire crew got in on the action. You got to see the cameraman, Mark Carter. You got to see the tech support, Lindsay Gillette. It made more sense to see the entire crew involved as opposed to one or two hosts walking around acting as if they're all alone somewhere. You know there's somebody holding the camera unless you're looking at Les Stroud, the Survivor Man. Now that guy takes surviving to a whole new level. For those of you that don't know this, when Les Stroud films himself climbing up the side of a mountain, he's the guy holding the camera. He's the guy doing the climbing. He's the only guy out there. He does not have a support crew running around in case something goes wrong. It's him all by himself out in the middle of nowhere. So not too many people are willing to do that. Anyway, getting back to Josh, did you see the episode when Evan Stone gets yanked off his seat backwards by some unseen, unknown force? The team was in Romania investigating the Oiabaciu forest. Has anybody else ever noticed that the two cameramen are named Weed and Stone? Is that a coinkydink or what? Anyway, the first episode of Expedition X was on Mothman. The team started out at Point Pleasant, West Virginia. They did all the things every paranormal investigator does when they're in Point Pleasant. They went to the museum, they went to the TNT area. I did see them stop in at the Coffee Grinder. We'd stopped there when we visited Point Pleasant several years ago. They have really good coffee. They have one called the Mothman Blend. Eventually, they wound up in Chicago at the Willis Tower, where a winged human that many people said looked like a giant bat had been seen jumping from the roof and flying away. Well, Phil the skeptic tried to say it was a base jumper. Oh, they interviewed a base jumper who said, no way, the building was all wrong for that kind of thing. I tried to find out if the folks living in Chicago have been harassed by the Men in Black. Unfortunately, there are several companies using the moniker MIB. There's the MIB Pest Control and the MIB Technologies, and of course you have the MIB Movies. The internet is a wonderful thing until it gets overloaded with things you're not looking for. I hate it when you enter an item you're looking for only to run into all manner of websites having nothing to do with your search. There are companies that pay money to Google and other search engines in order to have their web page come up anytime you search for anything. Since the MIB, the Men in Black, did show up in Point Pleasant back when the Mothman was first seen, I'm curious as to whether anybody in Chicago has had any run-ins with the Men in Black here lately. Many of the Mothman sightings in Chicago have actually been described as looking more like a giant bat flying around town. Makes me wonder what's going on in the skies over Illinois. I'd started putting the show together long before I knew what Expedition X was going to be about. I don't like coincidences. I find it odd, very odd. I got onto the subject of giant bat creatures while writing my latest book, Paranormal Laredo. People have reported seeing some kind of a giant bat-type thing flying around town. Laredo has a cryptid of some kind that a lot of people have seen. For as far back as people have been keeping records, there have been reports of giant creatures flying around the skies. Some of these were simply huge birds that looked a lot bigger than they actually were, due to it being difficult to judge size if you don't have anything to compare to. The big object all by itself in the sky could be a small bird, seen under the wrong circumstances. But then there are the reports where the observers were able to actually determine the size of the creature by comparing it to some known object. Indians have talked about the thunderbird for hundreds of years. They also have stories about giant bats that have attacked entire tribes, killing off many of the members. According to mainstream science, one of the world's biggest known bats is the Bismarck flying fox. This animal seldom gets larger than a 6-foot wingspan. According to cryptozoology, mainstream scientists are probably wrong. Many of the sightings from reliable people suggest that there might be something a lot bigger than the Bismarck flying fox. There might be a number of bat species that are just a whole lot bigger, but the scientists have not seen one or gotten one into the lab yet. Just because some guy sitting in a lab with a white lab coat on hasn't seen something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. No, I do not want to buy a new roof. I think they're watching me. The paranoid side of my brain says that somewhere out there there's somebody watching through the window of my office. And when they see me talking into the microphone, it's like, okay, let's call him and offer him something he doesn't. Oh, yeah, that's just paranoia. Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean you don't have enemies, though. Anyway, just because a person sitting in a lab hasn't seen some particular creature doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And then you've got the guys that will sit there and talk about these creatures, saying that the people out in the woods don't know what they're talking about because they never went to college. They don't have several letters before or after their name. That doesn't mean that there can't be something out there. Remember, the people living out in the woods, the so-called ignorant villagers, have something that the guys sitting in the laboratory don't have. They have the experience of living out where these creatures are. A splinter of experience outweighs a forest of training. I've met some experts who have never been through the activities they claim full knowledge of. I try not to laugh when they talk. I talk to addiction counselors who give out heaps of advice that comes from books written by people who lived their entire lives in uncomplicated conditions. People who were never addicted to anything, and yet they'll write books about it. They sound good, but their words lack credence. I've also talked to people who dropped out of school. They lived in what most people would consider horrendous conditions. Drugs and alcohol, fighting and abuse. Once they got their lives under control, they became counselors trying to help others break their addictions. The weight of their words would crush most college texts. On the island of Java, where the Dutch planted coffee, giving us the term, a cup of Java, not very far from where the Bismarck flying foxes live, people tell about a giant bat creature, the Ahul. It has a 12-foot wingspan. It's twice as big as the Bismarck. The creature gets its name from the sound it makes. It sounds like it's saying, Ahul. This bat creature eats mostly fish. The Ahul has gray fur with a flat face that looks more like a monkey than a flying creature. The Bismarck has a face like a fox, giving it the nickname of the flying fox. The Ahul isn't credited with any kind of supernatural powers. It doesn't attack people. It just flies around the forest, eating fish and making baby Ahul. If a giant bat lived anywhere, the dense rainforests of Java would be a very likely place. Another place for an undiscovered giant bat to live is Cameroon, a country in Africa where scientists have reported seeing a very similar bat. The creature is apparently called the Olitaoi by the locals. This word is also considered to be a curse word. The Olitau also have a 12-foot wingspan and a face that looks like a monkey, but its fur is black. It is regarded with a great deal of superstition and fear. There are about 1,240 species of bats that are categorized into two suborders. There's the Megachiroptera, or megabat, and the Microchiroptera, or microbat. The two categories are subdivided into other smaller categories, but you got the big bats and the little bats. So many different types of bats out there, it seems plausible that there just might be a giant bat out there somewhere as well. Something that the guy in the white lab coat hasn't encountered yet. The African giant bat is the Kangamoto, which has also been interpreted as a pterosaur by some cryptozoologists. When did the pterodactyl get renamed pterosaur? Who was it that made this decision, and why didn't they ask me first? Well, nobody ever asks me anything, except my wife. Well, this creature has reddish fur and has a long snout instead of a flattened face. It's not as big as the other two bats, but still it's big enough to cause problems if it were to attack you. Madagascar, a large island just off the coast of Africa, has tales about a bat called the Fangalabolo with a wingspan of about 5 feet. It's big enough for it's bigger than any other bats in Madagascar. The Guiaforo of Senegal is described as being a giant bat that is very smelly, and it often manages to terrify people by making its ways indoors. If you can imagine you're laying there in bed at night and all of a sudden this 5-foot tall bat comes walking in, that would scare just about anybody. The Goraforo is very much hated by everybody in the area. Its name is translated as the fear that flies by night. The Lularuka of Tanzania is perhaps the most tame and ordinary of the undiscovered African bats. Little is known of the species of giant bats. It's a fruit eater and thus mainly spoken of as a pest to agriculture. It is described as being about the size of a dog. As far as fruit bats being pests, most farmers in Africa don't seem to understand that the bats eat fruit that is already beyond what most folks are willing to eat. Fruit bats like rotting fruit far better than ripe fruit. So when the fruit bats go flying into the fields at night, they're not looking for the tasty snacks that us humans would eat. They're looking for the stuff that's going to stay on the vine and rot. The Sebastocem from Ghana in Africa is depicted in folklore as a bearded human with bat wings. It has black and white fur, and it comes with a 20-foot wingspan. They say that at one time they found the body of a Sasabanassum. Man, that's a big word to pronounce. Sasabanassum was found in the jungle by the natives. The body was drug into the village, and they took photographs of it. Unfortunately, the body and the photos all managed to disappear. The conspiracy side of me thinks this was done to cover up the existence of this giant creature. The other side of my brain says it was just a story. The conspiracy side of my brain is always a lot louder than the other side. With the body now missing, the story goes that the bat creature didn't really look very human after all. Now my cat has something to say. Why would scientists work up a sweat to cover up some discovery like this, to disprove? It could be some military folks wanted to use the creature's body to produce an army of giant flying humanoids. Even if it never happened, the creature just didn't work out. Maybe the body was too far gone and the project was scrapped. No one would want the story to come out, so any future tries could go unhindered. If nobody knew that the CIA had been conducting mind control experiments in the 50s and 60s, who would be out there telling them that they can't continue doing mind control experiments in the year 2020? As far as I'm concerned, they still are. How do we know somewhere someone isn't tinkering with the DNA trying to create a bigger, better soldier? Maybe one that can fly. Back to the bats. The Indonesian orang bati is even more mythical. These human bat monsters live in an extinct volcano on the island of Seram. The locals say the orang bati swoop in and steal children late at night. Orang means man, and bati means bat. Orangutan means forest man. Some researchers working in the fields of cryptozoology think that the real bat may be hiding behind these false tales. Then again, the orang pendek has been seen by hundreds of local villagers, and there are a few scientists out there looking for this creature. Some say that they've even seen it. The orang pendek is a forest ape that walks on 2 feet. It looks like an orangutan, only it's bipedal. Giant vampire bats reports are generally kept separate from giant bat reports, mainly because the giant vampire bat is large for a vampire bat, but it's pretty small in the bat categories. A vampire bat comes with about a 7-inch wingspan. They don't really suck blood like most folks believe. Instead, the bat bites a hole in its victim. The saliva of the bat has 2 secret ingredients. One is an anesthetic, so the victim doesn't know what is about to happen. The other is an anticoagulant, so the blood will keep flowing. The bat sits there and laps up the blood with its tongue. In the old Hammer films, when Dracula would bite his victim, there would be 2 nice little round holes left behind so Van Helsing could identify the culprit. There actually should have been 1 big gaping hole where the teeth had ripped into the flesh. Also, to make the vampire bat even stranger, as it is feeding, the bat will separate the red blood cells from the salt water. Blood is 55% plasma, which is made from salt water and other needed components. As the bat feeds, it will excrete the salt water. It pees on its victim while it's feeding. This way, the bat only has to carry the red blood cells back home and not all that salt water. Once more, due to movies, a lot of people think there are vampire bats in Europe. The total number of vampire bats native to Europe is 0. Vampire bats live in Central and South America, with the exception of those in the zoos. In 1988, a fossil of a vampire bat was discovered in Monges province of Venezuela. The bat was larger than a modern vampire bat, about 25% larger, and it was dubbed Desmodus draculae. It is more popularly known as the giant vampire bat. Now we're looking at about a 9-inch wingspan. Sites containing examples of it have been found in the Yucatan, Belize, northern Brazil, and Venezuela. In 2000, a tooth from a draculae was found in Argentina, much farther south from the modern range of the Desmodus genus. It is difficult to date exactly when draculae went extinct, or if it went extinct at all. All of the sites have been dated so far to between the late Pleistocene and the late Holocene era. A Camazotz means death bat in the Quiche Mayan language of Guatemala. It originated deep in Mesoamerica mythology as a dangerous cave-dwelling bat creature. A cult following for the creature began amongst the Zapotec Indians of Oaxaca, Mexico, and the figure was later adopted in the pantheon of Mayan Quiche tribe, and the legend of the bat god were later recorded in Mayan literature. In the Popol Vuh, an ancient Mayan mythological text, Zoltzilaha was the name of the cave inhabited by the Camazotas, a monster with a roughly humanoid body, the head of a bat, and a nose that resembled a flint knife. The monster was said to attack victims by the neck and decapitate them. In the Popol Vuh, it is recorded that this creature decapitated the Mayan hero Hunahpu. The Camazotos is also one of the 4 animal demons responsible for wiping out mankind during the age of the first sun. I didn't know the human race had been wiped out, but according to them it has been, once or twice. Bats are considered to be a menacing creature in many cultures. They're nocturnal, and thus they're associated with the night, which is also associated with death. Many common species also have relatively bizarre appearances, which makes them all the more off-putting for humans. It doesn't help that there's a species that actually drinks blood. Bat-like demons and monsters are common in South America and Central America. Another example of such a story is the Cunchun in Peru and Chile, which is thought to be created by a sorcerer known as a Kaku. They perform a magical rite, causing this severed head to sprout giant ears and talons and to fly about, causing death. The giant ears turn into wings, kind of like Dumbo, but with teeth and a bad attitude. In addition to this evidence, there have been mysterious sightings of giant bats or bat-like creatures. One of the earliest sightings dates to 1947, when Jay Harrison claimed to have seen several large flying creatures which were described as giant bats. In the early 1950s, a Brazilian couple claimed that they encountered a bat-like creature in the same valley that the fossils D. draculae were discovered in Brazil. Another incident occurred in 1975 when an outbreak of animal mutilations hit Puerto Rico. A farmer said that he was repeatedly attacked by 2 gray, bird-like creatures. These creatures were also seen by others throughout the mutilation outbreak. Another sighting occurred in the mid-1970s in Texas, when a farmer asserted that he had encountered a bald bat or pterosaur-like creature with a short beak and a gorilla-like face. It left a 3-toed print when it landed on the ground, which sounds very similar to the giant bird that was seen here in Laredo on the riverbanks back in the 70s. Bat Squatch is a flying cryptid that has been sighted near Mount St. Helen back in the 80s. It resembled a flying primate similar to the ahul or the orangbati of the Southeast Asia. Its name is derived from the words bat and Sasquatch. A witness took several pictures of the creature. However, these pictures have not been analyzed and they can't really be proven if they're factual or not. This creature was said to have yellow eyes, a wolf-like muzzle, sharp teeth, bird-like feet, and leathery bat wings that spanned about 50 feet. In addition, Bat Squatch is said to have been about 9 feet tall, and he had the ability to affect car engines. This is possibly a misunderstood sighting of Mothman, considering it also affected man-made things like the Mothman could. April 1994, Brian Canfield was driving in Washington's Pierce County when his truck suddenly died. And Canfield said a large creature landed in front of him. He said it was human-like. It was about 9 feet tall, and it had wings that looked like something from a bat. It also had a coat of fur that looked kind of bluish. There was a possible second sighting that was reported in 2009 near Mount Shasta in California. Several hikers witnessed a huge creature with leathery wings that appeared to be about 50 feet across. This creature was flying out of a crevice in the mountain. At first, an eyewitness described the creature as having a head similar to a pterodactyl. However, upon reconsideration, the witness said it was more like a bat or a fox. With that, I'm going to take a very brief pause, play a couple commercials. I'll be right back after this, so don't go away. You're listening to Arkanasa Radio. Did you hear a bump in the night and you think it just might be a ghost? Contact the Laredo Paranormal Research Society at laredoparanormal@hotmail.com. That's the LPRS for all your otherworldly needs. Makeup isn't something you want to just smear on and hope for the best. You might come out looking like Lon Chaney. Call Lourdes James, independent beauty consultant, and get a free makeover to see how makeup should be done. 956-723-3019. Did you go out UFO hunting and couldn't focus on the sky? Swing on by Del Norte Optical, 107 Calle Del Norte, right across from the Embassy Suites. That's not a weather balloon, that's a flying saucer.
Hello. My name is Inigo Montoya.
Back in 1776, someone said, "Give me coffee or give me death." And if that's how you feel, you should be at the Organic Man Coffee Trike. They make coffee the right way, one delicious cup at a time. 4501 McPherson, Suite number 9. Coffee, the stuff dreams are made of. This is Arkanasa Radio you've been listening to. And welcome back to the show. June 2011, a witness to a weird creature was in his yard walking his dog. He went to pick up the dog when he saw something up in the sky. He said, "I saw something flying in the sky. It had bat-like wings, blue fur, and had a face similar to a fox. The eyes glowed red. It was about 9 feet tall, at least. As I watched, it simply flew away." April 14th, 2014, in Archbishop Haben High School in Akron, Ohio, a second-period Spanish class spotted a giant black mass zip by the window of the classroom at incredible speed. The class claimed that it was a 9 foot tall with a 20 to 30 foot wingspan creature. August 5th, 2017, A sighting reported to the Mutual UFO Network described a giant bat similar to the one reported less than 2 miles away in the same day. The second similar sighting occurred in River Forest, which is a suburb of Chicago. According to MUFON, in case number 85664, the witness reported the following event. A man was walking with his 3 daughters, heading to the corner 7-Eleven. The oldest girl had just gotten out of a soccer practice. They usually did this after each one had practice. It was a little treat that the father gave them before the family would walk home. On this day it was overcast and quite a bit cooler than the previous day, which were very hot and muggy. After they'd gotten their treats, they made their way out the door and turned for home. The route of travel took the 4 past the practice fields at the Dominican University. They were all talking and laughing when the father spotted what looked like a giant bat flying just above the treetops at the corner of Division and Williams Streets. The giant bat was flying overhead of the intersection where they would cross the road in order to head towards their house. The father pointed the bat out to his daughters as being an odd thing. It looked too big to be a bat. At this time, the bat turned and began flying directly towards them. The 5- and 7-year-olds both screamed and dove to the ground. The bat flew right over where they were all standing or cowering, and then it turned, flying towards the football field. It vanished in a southwester direction. The father guessed he had watched the bat for about a minute or so. It took another 2 or 3 minutes to gather themselves and start back to their home. The 2 youngest girls kept looking in every direction, trying to see if the giant thing might come back and attack them. The bat looked like it had a human-like arms and legs. It was just a lot bigger and had a large pair of bat-like wings that it flapped as it flew. It was black with some gray, but there were no distinguishable features. The father insisted he knew what he had seen. It was a real creature, not some mechanical toy. It had made no sound as it crossed over the 4. When they'd gotten home, the father separated his kids and asked each of his daughters to describe what they had seen. Each of the 3 girls told the same thing. In an attempt to alleviate their fears, the father told his girls they had just seen a big, rather really big bat. He did his best to make light of the situation, even though he knew this was no ordinary creature. A sighting of a large bat comparable to this one has been reported on the same day in Melrose Park, which is another suburb of Chicago, less than 2 miles west of River Forest. Although the witness at Melrose Park made no mention of the humanoid features. If it was the same flying object, then it appears to have been moving east towards Chicago's lakefront area. The lakefront has seen a spat of bat or bird-like creature sightings in 2017 and 27 sightings last year. Most of the sightings have taken place in the lakefront area within a few miles of Lake Michigan, although there are some starting to come from the suburb areas around Chicago. The sightings generally take place in the evening or late at night, and often the witnesses are in a park or nearby one. They're almost always near water. A witness consistently describes a large bat or bird-like creature with humanoid features, although in one case the creature was reported as looking more insect-like. If you look for more on these giant bat sightings in and around Chicago, you'll see a lot of references to Mothman. The Mothman of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, did not look like a giant moth. The initial description was of a giant bird. November 15th, 1966, two young couples from Point Pleasant, Roger and Linda Scarberry, and Steve and Mary Mallette, told police that they saw a large, gray creature whose eyes glowed red when the car's headlights picked it up. They described it as a large, flying man with 10-foot wingspan. The creature began following their car while they were driving in an area outside of town known as the TNT area, the site of the former World War II munitions plant. Now, bats' eyes will shine red if you aim a light at them. Most birds don't have eye shine, except for birds of prey. This isn't each and every bat or bird, just the vast majority. The two couples told the police it was part man, part bird. When Mary Hyre sent the story to her editor, he didn't like the name she had used, Big Bird, so he changed it to Mothman, which he had gotten from Batman and Superman comics. The giant flying creature could have been a giant bat, or something similar to a bat. It could have been some unknown creature that nobody has ever seen before, and so it is neither bat nor bird. Here in Laredo, David was driving home after drinking a few beers. He was a little lightheaded, but he wasn't drunk. As he turned north onto McPherson, something hit his pickup, causing it to bounce. He looked in his side mirror to see if he'd hit something. Then he glanced in the rearview mirror. In the bed of his truck sat a huge creature. It looked like a giant bat. He said it looked like the thing from the movie Jeepers Creepers. The skin was shiny black, and its elbows were touching both sides across the bed of his pickup. Now, the bed of a pickup is roughly 5.5 feet across. You do the math. David screamed, and then he hit the brakes, which was a mistake. This caused the creature to slide forward, and it hit up against the back window of his cab. Now the creature's only mere inches from him. This sudden impact and terrifying consequences caused him to hit the gas. The acceleration made the creature tumble backwards and bounce out over the tailgate. Dave did his best to get as far away as he could without breaking too many speed laws. One person seeing an odd creature might be explained away as maybe an overactive imagination. Maybe he had had more beer than he had claimed. However, Judith lived on the south side of Laredo near Highway 83. Her and her friend Daniela were sitting outside her home on the tailgate of the pickup. Daniela was facing over Judith's shoulder towards a tree in the yard, but she had her eyes closed because they were both laughing. Judith caught movement from the corner of her eye. She stopped laughing and said, "Oh, shoot, did you see that?" Up in the tree was a huge creature. It was all black, and its skin was hairless and shiny like it was made out of latex. It had huge wings like a bat. The shape brought to mind the thing in the movie Jeepers Creepers. Judith's mouth just dropped open, and all she could say was, "Jeepers Creepers." The creature flew right over the two and landed on a tree across the street from them. Daniela ran to the cab of her truck, but Judith was in some sort of shock, and she couldn't move. Daniela had to come back and help Judith off the tailgate of the truck. They walked quickly to the door, and once Judith was inside, Daniela jumped in her truck and drove away. Two sightings. Still, people might be confused at what they're seeing. However, in 2012 on the south side of Laredo, somewhere around the Cielito Lindo neighborhood, A witness saw a huge bat-like creature flying overhead. It was too far away to get a really good look, but it definitely was not a bird. It had bat wings, and it flew in the swooping pattern a bat uses. The creature flew away into the distance. 2016. Someone saw a giant bat flying over Laredo College South Campus, which is west-northwest from Cielito Lindo. This took place right at sundown. Once again, the witness was certain that this was not a bird. It was huge, black, and it had a very distinct bat shape to it. Also, several people driving along the road that leads to El Cenizo, which is a small town south of Laredo, have said that they saw the creature from the movie, Jeepers Creepers, standing in the tree line right at the side of the road. They said that the creature would be standing there as if it was preoccupied by something and then suddenly look up as the car was upon it. It would then quickly move back into the brush out of the line of sight. Not one person, not two people, 3 different people have seen this creature on the side of the road between El Cenizo and Rio Bravo. Now, the people up in Chicago have been seeing this same creature flying around, and the people in Point Pleasant had seen it back in 66, 67. Is this the same creature? Don't know yet. Digging through the internet looking for similar stories, I came across the Great White Monkey Bat story. That's what she called it. This story comes from the Sis Bro Show, which is a brother-sister team that do their own podcast. Megan and her boyfriend were driving through the countryside in around the year 2000, or maybe it was 2001, when she spotted what looked like an old Halloween decoration up in the treetops. It looked kind of whitish, and it reminded her of a ghost. She was wondering why anybody would climb so high up to put up a decoration. As she stared at it, the thing suddenly dropped from the tree and began flying in their direction. The creature swooped down at their vehicle. As it passed over them, the driver gunned his vehicle to get the heck out of there. The bat creature came flying along behind them, but it was lost after a few minutes. When they arrived at their destination, the driver looked at the roof of his vehicle, where there were long scratches going across his roof. They looked like claw marks. He told Megan not to tell anybody, so she did. Tell people, that is. Once the story was out, people began to refer to it as the Great White Monkey Bat due to the description she had given. A few weeks later, a friend of hers called in the middle of the night, waking her up, to tell Megan that she'd seen the same monkey bat flying around the skies. It matched the exact description that she had given. Sometime later, 2013, her brother Brooks was driving to work when he saw what he thought at first was a deer jumping a fence. Looking closer, he saw that the eyes weren't moving. They were staying in one spot. He saw a whitish-colored creature standing by the fence. It was slightly hunched forward, and the arms hung all the way down to the ground. The legs looked like something you'd see on a dog. As the vehicle went by, he asked the driver, what the heck was that? The driver was looking up, and he said he didn't know. So, the driver threw the truck into reverse, and they went back to where they'd seen the thing. Even though they were both scared by what they'd seen, they jumped out with flashlights to try to see the creature better. Their curiosity got the better of both of them. Brooks said they were acting like the people in a horror movie that everybody is yelling at to get out of there, but they were far more curious than afraid. The thing was gone. The side of the road were open fields. There was no place for it to hide. It hadn't flown away. They both had been looking at the spot where the creature had been. This was when Brooks said they must have seen the great white monkey bat his sister had been talking about. If you want to hear him and his sister discussing this, you can find them on YouTube under the Sis Bro Show. SISBROSHOW. Yeah, they're worth listening to. They sound like they have had quite an experience. How many other reports of flying creatures just might have been giant bats instead of giant birds? How about the Jersey Devil? If you look at some of the drawings people have made based on descriptions, some of them do look a lot like giant bats rather than birds. The head of a horse on some could belong to the giant fox bat. 2015, an image appeared online when a man from Little Egg Harbor Township claimed to have encountered the Sai, a strange winged creature in Galloway, New Jersey. He'd been driving home from work when he noticed what he thought was a llama running in and out of the trees lining the side of the road. Shockingly, however, that llama sprouted wings, and it took to the sky before disappearing completely. He did manage to capture a bizarre photo with his smartphone. It shows a dark figure that looks almost like a goat, with horns, and what must be wings. The treetops can be seen in the background. Now, it's a blurry photo, kind of like just about every Bigfoot photo. When you try to zoom in with a smartphone, you've only got so much zoom capability, and the more you do zoom in, the less quality the photo is going to have. So it's hard to get a good photo with a cell phone, especially when you're driving. In 2017, a story appeared out of Spain of a gorgile-like creature sighting. Cryptozoology News interviewed the witness, Alex Nasirik, who claims he was awoken one night in September 2010, but what he said sounded like a dog with wings. The sighting happened at 1 a.m. in Santa Maria del Aguila, in Spanish Town in the province of Almeria. He heard a strange, spine-tingling noise that resembled a woman shrieking outside his open window. He looked out the window, only to find a bizarre winged creature approaching from several feet away. His description was pretty detailed as well. The creature was large, with a thick, short neck, and it had a long, stretched-out head. Its body was bulky and kind of a pinkish color, and it didn't seem to have any front legs. Its wings were curved with a span of about 2 to 3 meters. That's about not even going to guess. You figured out meters as opposed to feet. A meter is 30 inches, 3 meters. It had a long, thin tail, and its movements were slow and heavy, like it was struggling in order to fly. He said it kind of looked like a robot. His encounter didn't last very long. The gargoyle-like creature took off, flying away into the night sky. Now, could this have been a drone? Possibly. There are lots of drones out there that look like weird creatures, but who would be flying this thing in the middle of the night? And what about the scream like a woman? 2011, a witness named Ashley saw a weird creature in North California. She'd been walking down a street with her boyfriend about 3 o'clock in the morning. She witnessed what she described as a creature very similar to the Jersey Devil. It was flying very low to the ground, so much so that she could hear its large wings flapping. The creature was roughly 7.5 feet tall, with the torso like a man with very broad shoulders. When she saw it, she screamed. This caused the creature to turn and fly away, disappearing into the night. Could there be several weird creatures flying around our skies, some big enough to carry someone away? Is there a connection between the Mothman, the Jersey Devil, and these giant bat-type creatures? After talking to the folks here in Laredo that all described seeing a creature they all referred to as looking like the thing from Jeepers Creepers, I'm paying a lot more attention to the sky, especially at night. If you've seen something that looks like a giant bat flying around Laredo, or maybe you've seen a ghost or a UFO, send me your story and I'll put it in my next book, Paranormal Laredo. Even if it's just a story that your grandfather, your grandmother used to tell. There is some basis in fact in just about all of these old stories. If you don't tell them now, who's going to tell them 10 years from today? Hope you enjoyed tonight's show. If you did, tell your friends what they've been missing. Till next Saturday, this is Chris James for Strange Things.
Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man, the same murder three? Strange things that happen here, no stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.